This is Unrendered on IKTV. My guest on this edition is businessman Omroy Theophilus Mears, better known as OT. I'm Tony Regisford, and for the next hour, I'll be chatting with him. OT, if you may permit me to call you that, welcome to the studios of IKTV.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor, actually, to have you here, and I thank you for agreeing. Everybody knows you in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I'm sure, but everybody perhaps does not know your story. And the story I'm hoping to give people an insight to is the origins and the makings of the man we now know as OT. So if we may begin, tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Lomans Hill, Leeward Lomans. Lomans Hill, just above Kingston.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, was there anything special about the day that you came into being? Did the parents tell you anything that maybe you look back on now and you realize that, hey, OT was going to be somebody special?
I was born, my father was Lester John. My mother was Mary Myers. I was the third crop from my father and the fourth crop for my
your mother.
mother. My father was more absentee father because he had other children and other engagement, and we only see him at night sometime if he comes home early.
Right, right.
We didn't have the privilege of seeing him in the morning because he wakes up very early to leave.
Right.
So I was the sixth child of my mother. She had 5 daughters before me.
So you were the first boy?
I was the first boy for my mother, but my father had grandson older than me.
Now, that was not unusual for that era, was it?
I think it was the norm that make him a man, a macho man.
It's interesting, and I hope we get some time to talk about that. And I would like to know your views, but later on in the program, about those sorts of lifestyle when you look back to see where you came from and what your parents were like, and particularly your father and now you. But OT, let's talk about your origins. Let's continue to talk about your origins. You went to the Lomans Leeward Primary School?
Yes. It was just the Anglican school at that time. It was a church school.
It was run by the church, as many schools were in those days.
Yes, and it wasn't far from where I was living. So you can hear the bell ring and lead out and still on time. You meet them lining up to go into the hall.
And if I'm not mistaken, because my aunt, Alice Alexander, who later became Sutherland, she was the head teacher at that school for years. Was she, in fact, your head teacher?
She was not the head teacher of that particular school in that building. She becomes the head teacher for the new school that they built down near to Camden Park.
Oh, I see. So
it carried the same name, but it wasn't the same building.
So where it is now, it wasn't always located?
No.
All right. So tell me about your schooling. I mean, you had a primary school background. Did you go any further than primary school?
No. Well, before the primary school, I had a very small stint at a private school.
This would be like preschool?
Preschool. That's what they would call preschool now.
Yes, yes.
Before the age of 5.
Right.
I think I went to that school at 4.
Okay.
And after 5, you will go to the government primary school. I remember going to that.
So you went to the primary school up until what age?
Until 14.
14.
14. I had not that privilege to go to a secondary school. The economical situation of my parents did not afford me to go, because the first shoe I went to school is when I ready to come out of school. I was 14 years.
So for all that time before then,
It was
you
just
were
barefoot.
going to school bare feet,
Yeah.
basically. Was that the common condition
Very
of
common, very
the
common. A
other
few
children?
people would have wear shoes. And at times, even those that wear shoes felt out of place and they took it off.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
So after 14, you left primary school.
I left primary school. But before leaving school, at the age of 9, 10, I used to be very close to my mother. Not my father, because he go further than us, could have
Right.
gone. And even when they have school picnic and things like that, I never participated. I would go to the mountain with my mother. I could remember she would get jobs to dig banana hole and so on. In those days was penny to dig a banana hole.
One hole, penny.
For penny. So if she dig 4 hole, I might dig 2. So she would get paid for 6. So
Right, so you helped her.
I wanted to help her. Yeah.
What did you do after you left school?
Well, just after I left school, because having a little knowledge of the agriculture thing all the time, I went into the mountain to work for people, like helping them weeding, cut down bush and so on at the age of 14. But one day I got a job from a gentleman. I don't know his Christian name, but I know his surname was Cumberbatch. And we used to call him George too, either Cumberbatch or George.
Oh, George, right.
I think he is the grandfather of the famous Jerry George.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
So he gave me a job to weed up a portion of land for $7. $7
Was the price for the job?
was the price for the job.
Right. And how long did that take you to
It
do?
took me about 7 days or so, a little over a week, but I had to work steady to get it
Just under $1 a day.
done. I would say under $1 a day.
Right.
But that was plenty money, yeah? Because before that, at the age of 11, 12, I used to work with another fella, even when I was going to school. I used to cut 3 bundles of grass every day for $3 a month. Going to school, I either cut 2 in the morning or 1 in the evening or 2 in the evening and 1 in the morning, but 3 bundles every day for $3 a month.
While you were doing that, we'll get back to the job that you did for $7, but while you were doing that, cutting the bundle of grass, what did you do with the money? Was it money that you used to help your mother?
That was the main thing, to help my mother, because she couldn't afford to buy school clothes and things easily.
Right.
So I used to do that to help her, and not just she, help the smaller ones too.
Right. And then you said you were the only boy for her, or you were the
Yes,
first
so-
boy for her anyway.
Yeah.
So that you took on that.
I believe, I gave you a little scenario why I took on the responsibility. My father was a strong man. He was a willing man. But from age 7, I know he wasn't ambitious. My mother had more ambition
You had more drive.
than my father. So I kept to her side. I could remember we were living in a 9 by 15 trash house.
And by trash house, what do you mean? Is it like a Watland or what
A
people call it?
Watland dab is
Right.
the side,
Right.
but trash is on the roof.
Right. Okay.
So that's why we call it trash house. You either live in a trash house or a galvanized house or a shingle house in those days. That's how they
the
classify
roof
them.
actually defined what
Yeah,
type of
what
house
type
it was.
of house you live in.
Right. So was it like one room?
No, it had a little chamber and a hall. A chamber, you know, these days they say bedroom and living room.
Right.
We didn't have that. We have a chamber and a hall.
So everybody slept in the chamber.
We couldn't hold in the chamber
So somebody slept. Some slept in
because
the
it
hall.
was about 10 of us. So who can sleep in the chamber would sleep in the chamber. We sleep under the branca. There's a difference between a branca and a bed in those days. The branca was a rigid structure nailed up to the side of the house.
Okay.
It couldn't move. You have
Couldn't
to
move.
break it down.
Right. So it's like a fixed
Yeah, a
bed.
fixed thing. A fixed stand.
Right.
But we used to sleep under that because it was about 2 feet high.
So some people slept on top.
Some people, mother and daddy would sleep on top. Our mother, daddy, and the smallest child.
And you
And
the rest
some
you
of us sleep
slept
underneath. And who cannot hold in that little room would come out in the hall at night. The hall was fitted with a little sofa, 1 table, and 2 chairs. In the night, we have to take up the 2 chairs, put it on the table to find room
to sleep.
for us to sleep.
And clearly, I
But
don't have to ask, there was,
tell you
no
what-
plumbing, and there was
don't
no
talk about that.
electricity.
There is no electricity, nothing like running water. And our toilet was a couple yards from that building, in the
Right.
yard.
That's what
We
you call a
couldn't-
latrine.
We call that a pit latrine. We
Yes.
couldn't go there at night because you have to beg somebody to follow you to the toilet.
Right.
So they had something we call a tencel,
Or potty.
a potty. And we also had a pail with enamel but with a cover.
Right.
So when you want to pee or do anything like
Right.
that, you do that in the pail, cover it up until in the morning you carry it out and throw it by the dung heap and cover it up with breadfruit bush and all kind of things.
And most of the people around you grew up
Yeah,
like
that
this.
was
So
normal.
this
That was
just
Yeah,
normal.
that wasn't anything different. That was normal for everybody. But what drove me closer to my mother, we had no kitchen to cook. We used to cook in the yard on 3 firestone. And one Sunday afternoon, my bigger sister was going for the pot of food because where the firestone was, right around it was eroded.
Okay.
So it formed a little steepness to go up to the firestone.
Right.
And she went up for the pot, but in coming back, she slipped. And the food threw away.
So it gave her severe burns?
She didn't get burned.
Okay. But that was the end of your meal? Everybody's
No,
meal?
no, that wasn't the end of my meal. My mother said, take up what you all could take up. So we take up and we clean off the sand and so on. That day we didn't get no sauce because we used to drink the pot water for sauce. So when my father come home that Sunday evening, there was no food for him. And ups come a fight because she was arguing, so long I tell you to build a kitchen and you see what happened now? And it end up into a fight. Until he hit her and she started crying. I get between them and say, Mother, don't cry. I will come to build a house for you. So these
What
things,
age were you then?
7 years old.
And you made that
I
pronouncement
made
there
that
and then?
pronouncement and I fulfill it at age 19 to build a house for my mother. But you know, it take a little distance because I go to trade at 14.
We're going to cover that distance hopefully on this program to know how you got to build a house for your mother. Now, you were working after school for Mr. Cumberbatch.
No, not after school. I was working for another gentleman after school and even before school
Right.
to cut 3 bundles of grass every
No, I'm talking
day
about
as
after you
well.
left school.
After I left school,
Right.
yes. After I left school. It wasn't say you have a steady job with him, but when anything is to be done, he could ask you to do that. He didn't hire you daily. So he gave me this little job to weed up the grass.
Oti, we're at the end of our first segment. When I come back, I want to find out how you moved from the sporadic agricultural work that you were doing to carpentry, which I think is what started to define your success, if I should put it that way, when we come back from the break. You're watching Unrendered on IKTV. My guest is Mr. Omroy Theophilus, Ms. Oti, as he's affectionately known. More with him when we come back.